everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fractured Not Broken, the Relationship Wellness Podcast. It is your guy, Coach Reg, and I'm excited, as always, to be back with you for another episode because, quite frankly, guys, I love this work. I love this platform. I'm grateful for your feedback, grateful for the participation, and more than that, grateful that it is helping, right? And so, before we get into that, I need to introduce myself, right? Again, Coach Reg, relationship expert, relationship coach, author, presenter, and host of this podcast. And again, excited to have you here with me. When we launched this pod, one of the goals of it, and really the primary goal, is to transform how we show up and present in the relationships that matter most. And some things I've been thinking about from conversations I've had, things I've seen, things I've read, uh, brings to my attention that there are a lot of people hurting in relationships. And it's not about just when things are good, it's when they're not good and when you are thinking that it's done. That is what this particular episode is going to touch on, right? Honestly, or quite frankly, one of the things that I saw recently actually triggered me from an experience in my past. And I started thinking about, some examples I could share with you to illustrate it. And yeah, so we're going to get into that. So I think we'll title this one, Wow. So that's how you feel? Yeah. And it's because we take for granted, or can, that the person that we're in relationship with feels the way we feel, thinks the way we think, desires what we desire. And that's not always true. And it's not until we get into it that we discover that we're not as aligned as we may have originally thought. And the reason, folks, I believe that happens is because we don't have certain conversations. We don't know what to talk about. We don't know. I won't say that we're not clear on what we want or desire. We may just not have thought to communicate that, right? And so my hope in this is that you choose to proactively share and discuss the things that matter to you if you're entering into a relationship or if you're in an existing relationship. So we're going to use two examples, right? And the first one I'll share with you is, again, one that triggered me from my past. And it's not a one for one, but the experience when I watched this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is familiar, right? And that is this. So I was watching this show, and the couple they're older, I think probably in their 40s, and they were having a child. And I think they were preparing to marry, but not yet married, but yet their child is on the way. And so in the episode, the man wants to have his daughter they're having a girl, a baby girl, a little girl, I should say. And the man wanted to have his daughter christened. And so his significant other was like, where's that coming from? Because that's not what I want. And to his, it was a show, so, scripted, but the character handled it well. He didn't respond. He didn't snap back. He didn't say, what do you mean? I can't believe he didn't do any of those things. He just kind of said, well, why not? Why are you not in agreement with this? And her response was, well, I was raised a certain way, and I have my own ideals right now, and that's not something I necessarily want to do. And I'm pretty settled in my position. Now, of course, she didn't say it that way, and she wasn't nasty, but she was certainly convicted and convinced, I should say, and convincing in her position. And so the other character, the guy, he goes off to work that day, and he he talks to one of his coworkers. Coworker says, "Hey," he explains to him, his coworker, what happened, and he said, "I don't really know how to respond to this." And his coworker says, which I thought was fantastic. His coworker said, "Your significant other, she loves you, she cares for you, but it's important for you, and I believe that she will listen. But you have to know why this is important to you. And if you know what it is, know why it's important to you, and you communicate that to her, then she, he's of course he says, I don't know for sure, but she may be receptive. She may surprise you." Well, as the day goes on, um, in this episode, there's a whole lot of things that happened, and so in the course of that day, he became clear on why it was important to him because of in his line of work. Um, he's in law enforcement, and so he deals with a lot of death, a lot of loss, a lot of you know things, and although he's the one providing protection and safety and security in those regard in that capacity for his own life, it triggers this like, hey, how do I protect my child? And so in the course of his day, he realized why it was important to him, and he was able to share that with his significant other. And of course, it's scripted. And when he shared with her um, why it was important to him, he said to her that, hey, listen, in what I do, I protect people all day, but I can't protect our daughter, every moment of the day. And having her christened, I feel like there's some protection and covering that she has, right? And she's like, wow, I get it. And she says, I understand that, and I'm on board with that. And just let me pick the church. So it was kind of cool. Again, it's scripted, but the point of it, folks, is that that's a serious thing. And there may be other serious things in your life that matter to you and that we can take for granted. It can be how you feel about your parents. If something happens to, if your parents are aging, and you're like, what do we do regarding their care? Do we get if you're dating and you're going to marry? You know, if both persons have aging parents, what is the plan for them? Have you talked about that? Or are you just not thinking about that? It's important to know how your person feels about that. It's important for your person to know how you feel about that. Please don't take for granted. And these are just two examples, but there's so many more that apply to having conversations. And so it's important for us as individuals to understand what's important to us. If we're in relationship, to have that conversation, to introduce that conversation. And you can use the coaching model that's in love relationships and sometimes just letting go. It's called Decide. Now, I won't get into that right now because you can look at previous pods to know what the model is about. But my point is, folks, and my encouragement and exhortation is that you will choose to have the tough conversations. And they don't have to be tough if you're proactive. If you are proactively interested in knowing how your person thinks, because it's not enough just to love them and for them to love you. It's for them to also be aware of what matters to you. It's important for you to be aware of what matters to them, and to learn if you're not aligned. Rather you do that early than later. Go back to the topic of this episode, the title. Wow. So that's how you feel? Don't get to wow. So that's how you feel when you could have had a conversation, folks. That's all. Second example is learned of a couple recently, married couple, um, and they're struggling as many couples do. And the husband was sharing an experience with me that he and his wife had recently had, and it really illuminated some things that I recognize are likely prevalent and pervasive in other relationships. And that is hurt. See, when people respond, like if you have, in this example, he and his wife had gone away on a mini getaway, and they had a really good time from what he was sharing. And then the next morning, her attitude was totally different. I mean, she was snapping at him, um, kind of sharp in her responses and her tone. And and so he responded back with the same energy, which is what I've asked you guys to not try your best to do and resist. Again, emotional intelligence. Allow what you see, hear, or experience to inform how you respond, especially when you recognize that this thing that you're noticing is not tied to anything that you did. So we all get frustrated, but the idea is to resist a sharp response when you're frustrated because you don't want to say or do something that sorry can't fix and you can't recover from. So in their experience, she had um, there was something going on. And so he shared with me, what she said and all that happened. And of course, I'm not going to share that. But what I heard in his explanation or what he shared was her sharpness, her tone had nothing to do with their experience, had everything to do with other frustrations and other hurts. And you all have heard me. If you've seen this podcast enough, and if you haven't, again, go back and look at previous episodes. I've shared with you before. There are two things that happen. When you're with you plus another person in any experience, this is inevitable. You have the experience in which you both participated, and we can take for granted that after the experience, everyone is cool, but we don't know because we don't ask the question. It's what we experienced and how we felt about it. And what happens is when we don't give attention to our person or the other person in the experience, and it's not necessarily romantic, it can be non-romantic, but in the experience, everyone has feelings. And our feelings drive how we respond. And what he shared with me was, what I heard was that his wife is bruised and she has been hurt in their relationship. And for whatever reason, something triggered her. That's really not the point. The point is her responses didn't match what had happened the day before. So he's like, what's going on? And so what I'm saying to you folks is please remember that when you see behavior that is either off-putting, that can even be upsetting, and you know you weren't a part of it or you don't believe you were a part of it, please resist the urge to match that energy. Please remember to lean into your curiosity and to speak to what you're noticing and ask a question. What changed? Did something happen? We just had a good night. We just had a good past couple of days. But I don't understand what I'm seeing. Not what's wrong with you? Why are you tripping? Please don't do that. Don't say that because it only exacerbates and compounds the bruise and the hurt because yet again, the person is frustrated. Now, is it your fault that they're frustrated? We don't know because if you don't know why they're frustrated, you can't be held accountable for something you don't know, folks. I'm not talking about you reading minds and you learning stuff through osmosis. What I'm saying is if you're noticing behavior from your person or the person that you're in relationship with that is different than you understand, or it's a complete pivot from which you just experienced an hour ago, the night before, the day before, what have you, ask a question. That's all I'm saying. Because what we find is that responses are tied to typically symptoms of a deeper issue. And so we have to get to the root of it. Now we get into the work that I do. What I help people do is uncover and discover what the root cause is of the challenge. Because when you get to snappiness, is it really about the thing that just happened, or is it about something that's been happening that went unaddressed? Remember I said to you folks, people retreat and withdraw because they don't feel viewed, valued, seen, or heard. And if that is true, people are going to back up. And although they may still be in relationship with you, they may be physically there, but emotionally they're checking out. My caution, my admonishment to you all, regardless of relationship, romantic or non, if it's a new relationship, build good habits. If it's an existing relationship, pay attention to what you're seeing. Please don't take for granted just because the person is with you that they're with you, because emotionally they may be hurting. And fellas, let me tell you something. This is not about women. I need you to hear me on this. See, because we're talking about humans. We're not talking about a man or a woman. We're talking about humans because we all have feelings, which is why it's important to check in and ask that question. Hey, listen, not are we good? Different question is, did I hurt you unknowingly? And the reason I'm asking is because number one, I don't want to bruise you. I don't want to hurt you and I don't want to damage you and I don't want to damage us knowingly. And the reason I'm asking is because I don't want to continue to do things that cause you to perceive that I don't care. See, that goes both ways. Men, we can ask a question. Women, you can ask a question of your guy. Whoever you love, if you're in a relationship of any kind, it is a worthwhile conversation. So you can hopefully avoid, wow, so that's how you feel? All I'm saying, folks, is pay attention. Please pay attention. Learn to be curious. Ask questions. And please don't take for granted that because you're in a relationship with someone that they're with you. See, because they may be frustrated with you, you may feel like you're at your wit's end. Then you have to ask yourself a question. Have you shared with them your frustrations? You can't hold them accountable for something that they don't know and expect them to not hold you accountable for something you didn't know. It's unfair to you both. And it's quite frankly ridiculous to do that. Now, I'm not going to say ridiculous because, again, that's probably harsh. Let's just say it's less than smart. Let's do that. Yeah, let's go with that. Less than smart. Let's not operate out of perception. Let's not operate out of what I thought. Let's go with what we know based on what we have learned. And then over time, we verify and validate that what we've learned is still true because it can change. It's a simple, subtle, if you will, way to not take each other for granted, to not assume that we're good and that we are in a good spot. Because we all have patches. It can be a friendship, it can be a romantic relationship, it can be a family relationship. It doesn't matter. We have hurt each other. We all have hurt each other unknowingly. And when we didn't share that hurt with the offender, we harbor resentment because we're offended and the offender has no awareness. We can be more responsible individually, and we can be more responsible collectively. Remember, folks, this is about emotional intelligence. What we talked about today is self-awareness, self-management, and relationship management. Relationship management. Listen, do me a favor. I'm actually scouting locations for a workshop that I want to do. A live in-person workshop. I know it's radical, right? But yeah, we're going to do that. And the workshop is going to be around relationship management. And it's some things that I want to share with an audience, a live audience, to have some conversations real time, and to discuss some things and share some things that may help you in your relationships. Just let me know in the comments if that's something you're open to attending once you know the location. Now, I know everybody who watches this pod is literally all over the world, and I thank you for that. But if you happen to be in the DMV area or you want to come into the DMV area for that event, just let me know. Just put it in the comments. But anyway, folks, I hope that made some sense. That's always my goal, to share information that helps us be better, that helps us to transform how we show up and present in the relationships that matter most, because it's a worthwhile endeavor. I told you the first example triggered me from my past experiences. Not knowing what conversations to have, not knowing how to handle when your person is in opposition to what you want. And the thing that you want matters to you, but you don't even know how to articulate it. You may not even know why it's important to you. They're not wrong for their position, but it's a weird feeling when you hear it's like, they're like, no, I'm not doing. It's like, what? But I thought. Thoughts come from not knowing, folks. Let me paint a picture for you. This is what I'm saying to you. So, you know your name, don't you? Like, my name is Reginald. Coach Reg. Reggie. Or just Reg, right? I don't tell people I think my name is. I know what my name is. But when we don't know, we lead with I thought. You see how that works? But when you know, you know. But hear me, what you know may be good for today because that thing can change, which is why we want to check in. Anyway, listen, folks, I hope it made some sense. I so love you guys, and I thank you for loving me. Thank you for rocking with me. I hope this is helping. Again, folks, consider it. Consider avoiding as many conversations where your response is, wow. So that's how you feel. We can be proactive, and we can totally work to mitigate that. Listen, it's your guy, Coach Reg, and I love love. I will see you again on the next episode. Take good care. Bye.